Welcome to the McFeely Mess podcast at Inforum.com. In-depth conversations and opinion covering a variety of topics from the world of news, sports, and more. Here's Mike McFeely.
Welcome to another episode of the McFeely Mess podcast at Inforum.com. It is one day after the North Dakota primary elections. So it is Wednesday, June 12th, as we're recording this in the Forum building in downtown Fargo. And I thought that since we would know the results, obviously, of the elections today, that I could bring in one of our local election experts, a guy who follows North Dakota and local politics as closely and as well as anybody. You know him as a Forum columnist. He's also a former TV reporter and anchor and news director, and also has done some radio filling in for Joel Heitkamp and others on KFGO and other radio stations around town. He is Jim Shaw, and he joins us on the McFeely Mess podcast. Hello, sir. How are you?
Hello, Mike. Doing well. Thanks for having me in today. Lots to talk about.
Not the least of which is the Boston Celtics. I don't know if you're a Boston guy, right? You're a Red Sox guy.
I'm a huge Celtics fan.
Okay, I did not know this.
This goes back to when I was a kid. I used to take the subway into the garden for a quarter. We'd sit up in the first balcony. Tickets were $2. This is in the latter part of the Bill Russell era with John Havlicek and Sam Jones. Oh, those were great times.
Yeah. And my wife is a massive Boston Celtics fan.
Well, I read your McFeely Mess newsletter on that.
Yes.
And at least, even though I was pulling for the Timberwolves, at least you don't have a conflict of interest in the house. You can be with your wife and root for the Celtics.
Time out.
You're not with your wife rooting for the Celtics?
No, time out.
What?
You said a moment ago that you're a huge Boston Celtics. Oh, yeah, but they didn't play. Yes.
I don't have a conflict of interest.
Correct.
I would have had one in my house.
Yes.
There's no issue in my house.
Okay.
But I was talking about what you wrote.
Yes,
you were afraid you were going to run into that.
Yes. You're exactly right. I misunderstood what you were saying. So, yes.
And your wife's interaction with Tommy Heinsohn does not surprise me. He was never known as a warm, fuzzy guy.
So, Michelle is a huge Boston Celtics fan. If they had squared off against the Timberwolves in the finals instead of the Dallas Mavericks, there was going to be a conflict because Michelle's also, being a Minnesota girl, and loves Anthony Edwards, as everybody does, she was going to be conflicted. It didn't turn out that way. She is not a Luka Doncic fan. She is not a Kyrie Irving fan. Kyrie Irving's a weird dude. And so she's all in the Celtics in the finals. As we speak, they're up 2-0 on the Mavs. Game 3 is tonight in Dallas.
Correct.
So she'll be watching that. And it's exciting. And she's hoping for
it's very exciting
18th banner to be hung in what is now TD Garden. That they raised the old Boston Garden and now it's a newer arena the last 20 years or 25 years.
Right. The old Garden, which I went to many times, just had a charm about it. I mean, it was an old dump.
Yep, absolutely.
But it was our dump.
Exactly. Okay, so let's talk some politics. The election was yesterday. I don't know where you want to start. Should we start at the highest race?
Sure.
Let's start with the U.S. House race. That's the federal race. The GOP the Democratic primary was a one-man show, and Trygve Hammer will be on the ballot in November representing the Democratic NPL party in North Dakota. The interesting race was on the Republican side because Julie Fedorchak, Rick Becker, Kara Mund, Alex Balazs, the GOP endorsed candidate actually from the convention, and Charlotte Moore, somebody from Williston or something.
Williston, yeah.
Don't know why she was on the ballot, but she was. But Julie Fedorchak, a very conservative person. I know that people want to say that she's a moderate. But Julie Fedorchak is a very conservative Republican. She prevailed over Rick Becker, 46% to 29.6%. Kara Mund, who you predicted was going to win.
I don't recall that.
Okay, but that's fine.
I did. I misjudged. I misjudged.
I thought she had a chance. I thought she was going to do better than 19.6%.
I did too.
Which is what she got. And Alex Balazs, the endorsed candidate, got 4%, which shows, as others have pointed out, that the folks who attend the convention and are deeply involved do not necessarily represent the voting public as a whole.
That's true. However, he was accidentally endorsed because of the chaos that Rick Becker caused with the spoiled ballots. And after 2 ballots and nobody was endorsed, Fedorchak just said, I'm dropping out. You can endorse Balazs. So it was kind of a backdoor endorsement.
Sure.
But officially he was endorsed, but realistically he wasn't.
So your thoughts on Fedorchak winning by, 17, 18%, 16%?
Very impressive. A lot of factors there. First of all, she had tons of money. She had tons of people behind her. And
She had Harold Hamm behind her as well, which is an important distinction.
Yeah, exactly.
Doesn't matter how many, as long as she had Harold behind her. That's all that matters.
Right. And there's a lot to be said when you see that person on TV all the time or hear them on the radio all the time. It just leaves an impression. And she came across as she needed to be, which was not as extreme as Rick Becker, who was her main contender. Cara Mund did pretty well. I thought she would do better. Rob Port had an article today about crossover votes, that is, Democrats who voted Republican. And it was up from 2 years ago, but it was not at the level of it was in 2016 when many Democrats voted for Doug Burgum. They thought he was a moderate and, of course, got burned.
Right.
And so I think a lot of people were scared away from crossing over and voting for her, and she needed those crossover votes. Another thing that was huge for Turnberg, and I think it ended the election, was when Donald Trump endorsed her.
Fedorchak, yeah.
What? I'm sorry.
You said Turnberg.
My bad.
Fedorchak.
We're
talking about Michelle Turnberg of Fargo City Commission.
Right.
Before we turn on the recorder.
My mistake.
So we'll get to that a little bit later.
My mistake.
Yep.
When Donald Trump endorsed Julie Fedorchak, I think it was game over. And because you saw Rick Becker's ads and he was trying to tie himself to Trump, and there's Trump saying, nope, I'm not with you, I'm with Julie Fedorchak.
And Fedorchak, again, I believe she's an extremely conservative evangelical candidate, even though she doesn't necessarily come across that way. I mean, she supports a national abortion ban, which I believe is an extreme position.
She does, but it could be worse because I think she's at 16 weeks, I think,
Yep.
and a lot of people think that's way too long to allow a pregnancy.
But it's a federal abortion ban.
But it is a ban,
which Republicans have said, no, we don't want to do that. No, we're going to let the states decide.
You wait. If the Republicans get control of the House and the Senate, there will be an abortion ban passed through Congress.
Yep, there will be. But so Fedorchak came across as the most reasonable candidate, other than Cara Mund, who a lot of Republicans don't see as a Republican because she ran as independent and because she's viewed as the Democrats' choice. But Fedorchak came across. I just think that Rick Becker just comes across as a fringy, wacko candidate. No matter how hard he tries not to, and he tries to tie himself. Donald Trump is a fringy, wacko candidate in my mind, but I'm very biased. But he tries to present himself as a normie, and I just think that your average regular person looks at Rick Becker, as I do, and goes, "This guy, there's just something weird about this guy." And he's just extreme, and he's an opportunist, and he's run for everything under the sun. It seems like the last 5 to 10 years. And he just always I think he just turns people the wrong way or just turns them off or something. That's just totally a feeling.
No, I think so.
It's just totally a feeling.
He's got his hardcore 30% on the party support, but I think that's the way he's perceived. And Fedorchak was perceived more in the middle, even though she's not a moderate. But compared to Becker, she comes off as a moderate. But you're right, Becker, he's tried to walk back his stance about being against crop insurance, federal crop insurance, but I heard it on the radio the first time. It's hard to walk that one back.
At his core, he's a libertarian, right? And so he doesn't want the federal government involved in much of anything. And when you have that stance, and you come out and say you don't want the federal government involved in crop insurance, well, what does North Dakota, other than oil, what does North Dakota stand on?
It was a stunning comment from someone running to represent North Dakota. But he's had some other head-scratching comments. I remember when he ran for governor, he called the FM diversion project a boondoggle and was out to sink it. And
right.
Like, well, I don't know. For those of us who live in a flood-prone area, it's kind of nice to get some protection. It's not like it's just out of the blue. Let's just build this thing. There's a reason.
It's also an odd thing to say when you're trying to get votes in the largest city in the state.
It is.
And when, 70-some% of the citizens voted to tax themselves the first time around to pay for the diversion,
right.
That would tell you that crosses party lines, it crosses income level, it crosses everything to the point that people in Fargo wanted the diversion, and Rick Becker never picked up on that.
Right. And another one that struck me when we did the debate at KFGO was his staunch opposition to assisting Ukraine. And we had the 4 top candidates in there. He was the only one.
Right.
And I mean, it's like you just want to let Ukraine be overrun by the Russians, but it just...
But again, he's a libertarian, so it's war is bad. War is bad, but libertarians really do not want to be in any foreign wars, and it's isolationism is what a guy like that is for.
It is. But I mean, I see if he was elected that he would have been associated with the real far right,
the Freedom Caucus,
the Marjorie Taylor wing of the House Caucus, and it would have been crazy town.
So I just had lunch with a friend of mine, and we were talking about some of this as well, and he is with me just from the standpoint of the Republican Party has moved so far to the right that the Kevin Kramers and Julie Fedorchaks and others who, 15 years ago would have been seen as fairly extreme are now seen as moderate, right? I mean,
you're absolutely right.
So the scale has been moved so that the definitions now, I mean, maybe more so Kramer and like some of these state legislators as well, like some of the guys out west that are now seen as moderate Republican state legislators, only because they're being compared to the Rico Neoses and the Brandon Pritchards, right? But I find that as an interesting dynamic, not just in North Dakota, but everywhere, that the scale has been tipped so far to the right that people a decade or two ago that we would have looked at and said, wow, that person's out there, is now the middle. Kevin Kramer is extreme.
You're absolutely right. And I covered Kevin Kramer when he ran and lost for Congress against Earl Pomeroy. Kevin Kramer was a traditional Ronald Reagan Republican. Now those Ronald Reagan Republicans are a rare bird. There aren't many of them. They've all gone MAGA and the insanity associated with that. And Kevin Kramer is on that train. But the sad thing is, and Michelle, I'm sorry, I said it again. Julie Fedorchak, why am I saying that?
I don't know.
Why am I saying that? And Julie Fedorchak has moved to the right and in the Trump MAGA camp because you cannot get elected, especially from North Dakota, if you're not in that camp.
Right. How much of that do they actually believe? Like a Doug Burgum or a Julie Fedorchak. How much of what they say do they actually believe when it comes to Donald Trump and their stances that they're sharing publicly, and how much of it is just political play acting? And my view is that they believe most of what they say now. I think people are giving Doug Burgum too much credit when they say, "Oh, Doug is just saying that to favor up to Trump." I think that Republicans have fundamentally changed in the last, again, 10 to 12 years. That they're terrified that they're losing the country, and they're terrified of the left, and they're terrified of people with brown skin, and they're terrified of this, and they're terrified of that. They're terrified of crime. They're terrified of migrants. And I think that they have fundamentally change their beliefs, that they do believe what they say, and that they do agree with Trump on 95% of the issues that he has, stances that he has.
Well, I don't know Julie Fedorchak well enough to comment on that. But for Burgum, I know too many people who knew him before he ran for governor and said he was very much liberal on social issues and other issues. He was liberal to moderate. So I absolutely believe he changed for his own political future. So I don't believe that he's true to himself. I believe he signed bills that in his heart he thinks are fundamentally wrong, like the toughest abortion ban in the country. He signed that bill, or the bill that takes away medication from transgender children. Again, from what I know of him, I just don't believe that's who he is. But that's what furthers his political career. And everybody who runs for office is all about, well, how do I stay in office? How do I go to the next level? That's where we're at. And I don't know if you followed it, but you have to get in line. After the verdict where Trump was convicted on 34 counts, and everybody's claiming how it's horrible and it's all the weaponization of the Justice Department and a sham, and we're talking about our governor here.
Yep.
Maryland former Governor Larry Hogan, now running for the U.S. Senate, said we should respect the jury's decision. And he got hammered.
He got destroyed.
And he has lost support from the Republican Party.
Destroyed.
So you are not allowed to say anything that sounds like common sense that isn't on board with the conspiracy theory that it was all a sham against Donald Trump.
You're right. Yep, you're right. The Hogan story is a good one because we could all watch it happen in real time. You could see the tweet, you could see the response, and just like, wow. I mean, I think Donald Trump's campaign manager, like, publicly tweeted out, your campaign is now finished.
Right. And do you know how foolish that is? Because the Senate is up for grabs. And Maryland, because of Hogan's popularity, represents a real good chance to flip a seat. And so they are willing to lose that seat and maybe lose control of the Senate, although I think Republicans will flip at least one seat, West Virginia. But maybe lose control because Larry Hogan did not fall in line and go along with the narrative that this is a sham and weaponization of Joe Biden's Justice Department.
Speaking of Doug Burgum and political ambition, let's move on to the governor's race in North Dakota. Merrill Pepcorn will be the Democratic representative in November, but the Republican side was up for grabs on Tuesday night, and Kelly Armstrong, the current U.S. House member from North Dakota, their lone seat, easily won the GOP primary, beating Tammy Miller, Doug Burgum's lieutenant governor, and somebody who Doug Burgum encouraged to run and supported early, and the key word there is early, in this campaign. Tammy Miller got 27%, so 73 to 27. It was a rout for Kelly Armstrong. Surprised at that? At any part of that?
No. Miller never had traction. More importantly, she never gave us a reason not to vote for Armstrong. You know, she's talking about how Joe Biden hates North Dakota. I don't know where that comes from. And how she held off the bad guys with her shotgun. But there was no contrast with Kelly Armstrong. I feel that she missed a golden opportunity because there is one issue which she never talked about, certainly never brought up unless she was asked, and even then her answers weren't strong enough, that really could have helped her, and that is property taxes. That's, to me, is the number one issue by far for North Dakotans. They're fed up with their high property taxes, and they want something done about it. Now, will they support a complete ban on them, which could happen in the November ballot? Don't know, because that's pretty drastic. But if she came out with a plan and said, we're going to cut this and we're going to do this and we're going to take money from this pot to that pot and we're going to give credits here, she could have gone gangbusters, but she never addressed the important issue. For that matter, I don't know, maybe I'm missing something. What issue of substance did she ever address?
Well, yeah. And if I recall, and I might be wrong, I believe that she was asked about it, as was Kelly Armstrong, in the debate that was moderated by Dave Thompson of Prairie Public.
Right.
I think he brought up property taxes, and they had I think they both, and again, my memory might be wrong, but I think they both came out and said that they don't support a total ban, and they gave both Kelly and Miller gave up, a mishmashy, wishy-washy answer.
Right. But there were two things there. First of all, Miller's focus was on eliminating the income tax. I have never, ever met any North Dakotan who's upset about the state income tax.
It's like 3%.
It's the lowest in the country for any state that has an income tax. Yeah. Many North Dakotans don't pay an income tax. Secondly, in the second debate, they were each asked, what was your top priority? And Armstrong right away said, lowering property taxes. And Miller said, diversifying the economy.
Right.
And I thought,
which is
right there.
Which is a very Doug Burgum-like answer, by the way.
I said, well, that's it. That's they don't need to ask any more questions. Armstrong just won this debate.
Yeah. I had a person today text me and say, who won between Armstrong and Miller? And I said, Kelly Armstrong. And they said, is that a good thing? They don't follow politics that closely. And I said, well, it's kind of 6 of one, half dozen of the other in some ways. I don't know. And getting to what your point you just made is that I don't know that there was much separation between the two candidates. There was never a contrast.
There was not.
As you said, between Tammy. She never drew a contrast.
No.
She agreed with Armstrong more than she disagreed with him publicly. I mean, she would say, oh, I agree. It's like, well, okay. Then,
I know.
Then why are you running then? I never understood why she was running.
I didn't either. I mean, but even the contrast, when she went negative, it was about him being a lawyer and in a sex abuse case.
Yeah. It was weird. Yeah.
Yeah. But, and even the victims there didn't like that. I don't know either. I'm assuming Doug Burgum has taken her on as a handpicked successor.
Yep.
He brought her in and made her chief operating officer of the governor's office. Then he handpicked her to become lieutenant governor. And so naturally, when he decides not to run for re-election, he picks her. But then when he sees that she's polling so low, he ran for the hills.
Yes.
And my guess is that's a huge reason why Trump did not endorse her, because I believe that if Burgum asked, Trump would have endorsed her, or if he pushed hard. But Trump likes to support winners.
He waits to see who's going to win. Then he endorses.
And he does not want to be associated with someone who is going to lose that badly. And frankly, neither did Burgum, because he's trying to move his way up the ladder to be vice president, or at the very least be in the cabinet. So he can't be associated with her either. So they're all looking out for themselves. And they said, Tammy, you're on your own.
I would like to get Tammy Miller. I don't know her. I'm not sure I've ever spoken to her, but I would love to sit down with her and ask her, look her in the eye and say, do you regret what you did? Did you regret saying yes to Doug? Right. When Doug, the legend in Bismarck, if you will, is that, the Brent Sanford thing was orchestrated to get him out of there so that Doug could then bring in Tammy to be lieutenant governor, so that he could then forward her campaign to be his successor and, have a third term for Doug Burgum. Whatever you think of those machinations, they make sense to me. I don't know if they're true or not. But if you're Tammy Miller, pretty early on in the campaign, you had to be going, what did I get myself into?
I know. This is just not working.
And do I really want to do this?
I know.
It's like I never got the sense that she was really into it. Like it wasn't
right.
Kevin Kramer is among the most ambitious, blindly opportunistic politicians I've ever seen. He makes no bones about the fact that he wants to be in this position, whether it was the U.S. House, whether it was the U.S. Senate. He makes no bones about it, and he does that's who he is. That he wants to direct policy and make a difference and have the evangelical Christian church take over America. That's what Kevin Cramer wants, right? Doug Burgum is clearly blindly ambitious right now. Doug Burgum sees himself at the right hand of Donald Trump and then possibly replacing Donald Trump in the White House. I mean, Doug Burgum has this. I don't know that Tammy Miller ever defined to anybody, why do you want to be in the governor's mansion, Tammy?
She didn't.
Why do you want to be that?
She didn't. Although I'll throw out this temporary hypothetical for you. If Trump picks Burgum, and we all know he's on the short list, I would guess, I don't know this, but I would guess that Burgum would step down as governor and Miller would finish the term. What do you how could Burgum, if he gets picked as the VP candidate, he's already not in the state half the time anyway, then he'd be out. Yeah, more than half.
More than half.
More than half. All right, so if he's a vice presidential candidate, we'll never see him.
Right. So I guess she could theoretically be governor of North Dakota for,
it's something.
6 months or whatever it is. And she'd have her little portrait on the wall in the Capitol and she'd be Governor Tammy Miller. I could see it happening. Let's move on to our last thing I want to talk about with you. And I know it's local politics. And so if you're outside of Fargo, I'm not sure how much interest listeners would have in this, but we're in Fargo and the base of our readership and our listenership is in Fargo. And so I want to talk with you about the Fargo City Commission races yesterday. Michelle Turnberg, there's the name you want to say, a former TV anchor here in Fargo, Moorhead. She got the most votes, a political newcomer, so she will be a Fargo City Commissioner. She got 21% in Fargo's ranked choice voting. Incumbent John Strand also was one of the two people elected yesterday. He got 20.2%. Al Carlson, a fossil from the past who just can't say no to running for anything in Cass County or in Fargo, he actually finished third with 17.6%. And Arlette Preston, an incumbent Democrat, it's a nonpartisan position, but she's a Democrat. She did poorly. She got 17% and lost her seat in the city commission after only one term. Your thoughts in general on that information?
Mostly surprising, especially Michelle Turnberg. I did not see that coming. There's a lot of factors that probably were in play there. She had tremendous support from the MAGA Donald Trump crowd. She wore that on her sleeve for those of us who pay attention to such things. Also, a lot of people remember her from television. She was a very good television anchor. She looked really good on the air. I think that resonated with some people.
Some of the older folks probably who probably vote at a higher rate.
Right. Well,
she hasn't been on TV for 20 years. I agree with you.
The name rings a bell.
Yeah. Yep.
Has it been 20 years?
I bet it's been a long time. Oh, yeah. It's been a long time.
Okay.
Maybe 15, but it's been a long time.
All right. Well.
But I agree with you, but I'm just saying that.
But if you're going in and you haven't paid much attention and you're trying to, and you have approval voting and you can vote for more than two candidates. Oh, Michelle Turnberg. I liked her on the air. I'll vote for that. I don't know what's in their minds, but that one surprised me. Strand, I assumed would finish in the top two. Al Carlson, I thought he would finish in the top two. He finished third, really? And I based that on the fact that he finished third last time, and he spent a ton of money this time, and so there was a base of support. Arlette, like you said, was the disappointment. She doesn't quite connect with the left of center crowd like John Strand does, and she just ran into this secret buzzsaw that nobody saw coming in Michelle Turnberg. But so that one was the big surprise on the losing side.
Michelle Turnberg was one of those people who was involved with the anti-masking in the schools, and she's an anti-vaxxer, I believe.
Correct.
And you're right, she's in the MAGA crowd, and those people are active. There's no doubt. I mean, we're talking earlier about the convention, the state convention. I mean, she fits into that crowd of the active political righties, far righties. And that's the people spoke fine. I wonder. Arlette Preston was a good city commissioner. I mean, she was involved. Mm-hmm. You might not have agreed with. I didn't agree with all of her policies or all of her decisions or all of her votes, even though I line up mostly with her politically. But she took the job seriously, and she had the getting things done for Fargo in mind. You know, it wasn't. She knew what the job was, and she did the job to the best of her abilities, I believe. I don't know that Michelle Turnberg, and I don't know her well. I know her just a little bit. I don't know that she. If the first thing out of your mouth after you win a city commission seat is, I fully support Donald Trump, what does that have to do with being a city commissioner in Fargo? It has nothing.
It has nothing. But what surprised me about the city commission race is I had always, in recent years, viewed Fargo as kind of a little left of center, as opposed to the rest of the state, which are generally far to the right.
Yep.
And our city commission elections reflected that.
Yep.
And this threw that theory out the window, where you had Michelle Turnberg finish first and Al Carlson finish third. So maybe Fargo is moving to the right. No?
Well, I thought the same thing. The Turnberg thing, I think, is a special case. From what you mentioned before, that I think enough people remember her from television, and I think it's more that than her politics necessarily. Al Carlson too still has pretty good name recognition. Part of it might be that people are just want to change too, right? I mean,
right.
I mean, that they've seen the city commission operate. They've seen the school board operate
and that was definitely what you saw in the Fargo school board elections, where one incumbent was booted out and the second one just barely hung on in Nikki Gullickson winning.
Yep.
So people wanted change there.
I think some of the same dynamics might be in play in this. That's just my amateur view of the city commission race. Maybe they said, you know what, let's just mix things up here a little bit. I'm tired of the status quo. That happens. I mean, it happens in politics. It might happen nationally. November. We might have everything upended in November, including democracy. But that's a whole different story.
A sad story, but a different story.
Yep. So the city commission now is 5 members. 2 of them are Trumpers. 3 of them are more on the liberal side of the aisle or the Democratic side of the aisle.
But 2 of those 3 are kind of in the middle, I would say. Don't you think Kopak and Mahoney are more middle?
They're moderate.
And Strand is more to the left.
Yes. Yep. I think so. Or at least they play that role for political reasons, which is what people do. And so I don't know that a lot is going to change in terms of the voting. Maybe it will. I don't know. But Arlette was a pretty solid lefty vote for the city council, or city commission.
Always. It's interesting. I don't know if you've thought this far ahead because we just had this election, but in 2 years, there's going to be a new mayor in Fargo.
Yep.
And so presumably, but not necessarily, that person will come from the city commission. So you got all sorts of candidates there. It could be Strand. It could be Pepcorn.
I think they all want to be mayor.
Yeah.
It
could be Denise Kopak. So right away, so they could be positioning themselves to run for mayor.
Yeah. Michelle Turnberg might run for mayor.
Michelle Turnberg, maybe. She might.
And that would really piss off Dave Pepcorn. So I hope she runs.
Yeah.
Because Dave Pepcorn really wants to be mayor of Fargo. Really, really wants to be mayor of Fargo.
Well, then he needs a big field. I don't know that Pepcorn can win a 2-person race, but a 3-person race, yeah, he could win.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Anything else you want to add before you jet here, as the kids say?
No, it's just quite a night. Not really on the statewide level any big surprises, except I don't know. It hasn't received much publicity. I wrote a column about it. The statewide measure that if you're 81 or older, you can't serve in Congress from North Dakota. I hope taxpayers are ready to shell out money for that one. because that is unconstitutional.
Yeah.
States cannot make that decision. And you think you're preventing older people from serving, but you're not. That could cost millions and millions, could end up in the Supreme Court. And right now the Supreme Court says states can't do this. So this one is like, really? What is the point of this?
Well, you know what the point is.
Well, yeah, and frankly, it's a commentary on Joe Biden.
Yes, I was going to say that's what the point is. It's to make Joe Biden look bad.
It's not a good look for him.
No.
Which and in my view, if he loses, and if the election were held today, I think he would. I think his age is the number one factor.
Yeah, I agree. I was just again speaking with my friend over lunch. Donald Trump is only 4 years younger.
Actually, like closer to like three in a couple of months.
Okay.
Trump is about to turn 78. Biden's 81.
And if you watch Donald Trump's speeches or speaking these days,
oh my
Donald
goodness.
Trump is
Looney Tunes.
Oh my God! But I mean, there is clearly cognitive decline there. I mean,
did you hear him the other night, Las Vegas, talking about whether he'd want to be electrocuted on the boat,
in an electric boat,
or get eaten by the shark? What is that?
Yes. Right. And so there is clear decline there in Donald Trump, even though the righties don't want to believe it, in part because they don't see those videos when they're watching Fox News or Newsmax, right? They're not going to show Donald Trump speaking gibberish. They're going to show Joe Biden stumbling over some words, and then that's cognitive decline. But the point that I made is the trouble, one of the troubles with Joe Biden among the voters is that he looks old.
Correct.
I mean, Joe Biden looks old. He looks like an old man.
You watch him walk, and he walks slow. He walks like an old man.
And his face has that look of an old, and Trump still looks terrible because he's overweight.
He has great makeup. He has great hair coloring.
But he exudes or projects energy. Whether it's
he does. Whether it's loony energy, but it's energy.
Right. And then Joe Biden just doesn't anymore. And that's a problem for Joe Biden, and it's a problem for democracy.
It is. It's a ridiculous reason not to vote for him, given who Biden is running against. But that's when that's what is in people's minds. And and I'll tell you how you can tell this. I don't mean to prolong our segment here, but I look at the polls every night, and as we know, there are 6 or 7 swing states that will decide the election. And in all of those states, Biden at best is tied and generally 4 to 5 points behind. But in virtually all of those states, with the exception of Georgia, there is a Senate race. And the Democratic candidate for the Senate is up by about 5 or 6 points.
Yes. Yep.
So you can see
Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Michigan, Arizona,
exactly.
all of them.
Right.
Yep.
So you can see that something else is going on with the presidential race compared to the Senate race. It's not just about the political party. It's about the presidential candidate.
Yeah. Splitting the ticket is what's going to happen.
And Biden is in trouble.
Yeah. We'll see. I mean, we're a ways out.
Well,
I keep saying that. I keep hoping.
I hope you're right, but the people in the Trump camp, there's nothing that's going to change their minds. He was just convicted of 34 felonies, and if that doesn't change people's minds, what will?
No,
I don't think anything
those aren't
will.
the ones. Those aren't the ones that you need to worry about. You need to worry about that little tiny sliver of people in all those states who are still persuadable, even just a little bit,
right?
And who might get in the voting booth and go, I just can't vote for Donald Trump because he's nuts. So I'll vote for Joe Biden with my holding my nose. The Trumpers are gone. I mean, they're never coming back. They're gone. The other trouble for Biden, of course, is his own party. Young people not enamored with Joe Biden. Young Democrats are not enamored with Joe Biden.
They aren't. And again, in these swing states, Robert Kennedy could make a difference.
Yes.
If you just can't bring yourself to vote for Trump because you just know you don't like him, but you just can't bring yourself to vote for Biden, I think people will vote for RFK Jr. And he's a wackadoodle too.
Yes. Yep. He is.
So, but I have a feeling RFK Jr. will hurt Biden more than he will hurt Trump.
Yep. Yep. Just a lot of black voters as well. Many polls show black voters not as enamored with Joe Biden as they were 4 years ago, and so
which is stunning.
There's just a
why?
Yeah, and
why?
I can't speak to that as a.
He has put more African Americans in the federal judiciary than anybody. First person to nominate put a black woman in the Supreme Court. First person to put a person of color, let alone a woman, as vice president, and on and on.
And also, Donald Trump is a blatant racist.
Correct. Correct.
Also, there's that little factor too.
Yeah. Stunning.
Yep. So, well, it's been a good run. 240 some years it's fine. Whatever. It's been a hell of an experiment, Jim. But
golly. Well, we won't lack for material to write about.
I will see you in the gulag in Pembina in January of 2025. So.
All right. Save a spot for me.
Doug Bergen will put us there. Thank you, my friend. Appreciate it. Good stuff.
Thanks for having me.
Yep, you bet. Jim Shaw on the McFeely Mess podcast this week. Thank you all for listening. Subscribe to the forum. Subscribe to Inforum so we can keep doing this stuff and shine a light and try to save democracy one podcast at a time. See you next time.
Thanks for listening to the McFeely Mess podcast at Inforum.com. For more podcasts and columns, head to Inforum.com and search Mike McFeely